All right, guys, it's the end of an era. UFC 323 in the books, and I'm joined here by a good friend to break it all down. Of course, before we get into it, just a quick reminder, NordVPN is the place to go for all your VPN needs. Special deal below. Manscaped, 15% off with the code word submission. And Saley for all your eSIM needs. 15% off with the code word submission. Get it right now. Okay, I introduce him here from the hotel room. Right after the event, he's exhausted, but he's killing it all the time. Aaron Bronsteter, thanks for joining me here on Submission Radio, my friend.
Always my pleasure. What an event tonight.
Oh, dude, it's the end of an era. And I have to say, and let's get this right off from the start, Petr Yan versus Merab in this rematch. People thought that Merab was going to dominate him. They didn't give Petr much of a chance. Both men were compromised in this first fight. And it played out like I compared it earlier to a cigarette after a good night. You know what I'm saying? I felt full after watching that fight. It was an incredible performance by two men. So many storylines going in there. I can't even speak because I'm not sleeping right now. I got the baby and I got my kid here in the room running around. But you were there live. What was your reaction when you realized, oh man, we're actually in for an all-time classic here?
Yeah, I knew that Petr Yan had the capacity to do that. I wasn't. It was one of those situations where, like, picking against Merab, you're never really going to look smart doing that. But tonight was sort of the exception because I think Petr Yan, when you look at it, I was talking to Ayman Zahabi, who's been my analyst with me all week, and he didn't take offense when I said this, even though he fights in the division. I said, skill for skill, I think that Petr Yan is the most skilled fighter in the bantamweight division because he's got it all. He's got incredible boxing. He's got great wrestling. And I think that if you look at the first Merab fight, if he did indeed enter that fight with a compromised shoulder, if a guy throws 49 takedown attempts at you, that's a lot to handle. And clearly Petr Yan tonight showed that he is still an elite fighter in the UFC. Absolutely. If you had any doubts about it before tonight, you don't now. And I was one of those people that didn't really have doubts about it. I mean, you look at the three losses that he had in succession. He had beaten Sandhagen to become the interim champion, but then loses his fights to Aljo, loses to Sean O'Malley, loses to Merab. Like, those are the elite guys in the division. And
yeah.
those fights were all, aside from the Merab fight, like, they were all closely contested fights. So I think that what Yan did and what's really special about what he did is, and I don't think that there's any similar career arc that a UFC fighter has had where they're the champion, they lose the belt, win the interim championship, lose 3 in a row, and then win 3 in a row and become the champion again. Like, that's a lot to overcome to become a 2-time champion, 3-time if you count the interim. But for him to do that, I think is a pretty remarkable thing to do, and really speaks volumes about the kind of discipline that he has and the belief that he has in himself that despite all of those different bumps in the road, he can come back and reign over a division.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, man, he had the performance of his career tonight. I mean, he's had great moments before. Obviously, you mentioned the championship and everything in between. But this was a Petr Yan, man. That was just on another level. There was so much to like from what we saw from him. First of all, the wrestling, the takedown defense. He got Merab down, which was insane. The constant pushing forward on Merab, the body kick, the jab, the way that he was throwing that right hand. What were some of your favorite moments from Petr Yan in this fight? There were just so many incredible moments from him.
Well, I thought that his use of the liver kick was really yeah. I mean, he landed so many effective liver kicks in that fight that really slowed Merab down. And I mean, if you want to take the gas tank away from a guy who's known for having perhaps the greatest gas tank in the history of the sport, liver kicks will do the trick against any human being if you're landing them with that sort of efficiency and effectiveness. I said that if you said that Yan was going to win tonight, I think that a lot of people would have agreed going in that that was an unlikely outcome. But if you were to say that he would win, he would land more significant strikes and have more than double the amount of takedowns on like a third of the attempts or like a quarter of the attempts that Merab had and won in that way, I think people would have said that was impossible. And if that's the way that you thought going into this fight, then he did the impossible tonight because he was just better everywhere than the fight went.
Dude, I'm having a look through the stats here, and it's incredible. It's just insane, the fight that we just saw. I gotta say as well, you're talking about those liver kicks. What about when he lands that kick on Merab, and Merab is like in pain, and then he just yells out at Purian in the octagon, like like fully just said. But then like Merab took some damage tonight, right? The fight started. This fight did not go his way, and a lot of bits of the fight, but he used his championship heart and his will to somehow stay in the fight and somehow keep the battle going. There were points where he was bloodied, his nose was destroyed. He just refused to give up. There's a lot. There's a lot to celebrate about Merab for this fight. He didn't win, but man, he gritted his teeth and he just hung in there on a night that wasn't going his way. How impressed are you, even in this defeat, from Merab just not giving up, man? He did not give up. He looked like he was dying out there in certain bits, but he would not give up.
Yeah, he certainly showed his championship medal. Never got knocked down. When he got hit to the body, he never took a knee or anything like that. Just trucked through. But I had the fight I had the fight scored differently than the judges. I had it 50-45 for Petr Yan. I thought he won all 5 rounds. All 3 judges gave Merab the first round, which surprised me because the striking differential wasn't that big. And I thought that Yan landed by far the most significant strike of that round when he kind of visibly rocked Merab in the first round. And I thought the second round was the closest round to the fight, in my opinion. That was a round where I thought you could have kind of gone either way. I thought that Jan kind of finished strong, and that's why I gave him that round. But I just thought it was a masterclass from Petr Yan. And like you said about Merab, he certainly showed his championship medal in that fight. I think that 4 weight cuts in a year can take a lot out of a person. And, you don't want to point at reasons why he wasn't able to win tonight, but I certainly think that played a role.
Yeah, for sure. But you know what, though? At the end of the day, he ran to the UFC office and wanted to do it. So it's kind of like, it's going to be a learning experience, I think, for Merab. But it's at the same time, we can't really talk about it, right? Because he's the one who wanted to do it. So at the end of the day, it's like, you chose to fight like this, Merab. Maybe you learn in the future. Also, he sparred a guy this morning. We saw the video on social media. Maybe it's time, to rethink things a little bit. And that's what you mentioned, the striking. It's insane because it was very similar, but without a doubt, in terms of the numbers, but without a doubt, Petr Yan's striking was way more significant, right? The way that he threw the jab, the body kick. When he was throwing that right hand, it looked like he was throwing it like throwing a pitch out at a baseball game, right? Like he was trying to kill Merab with those shots. And I guess my question for you with this one is, what do you think? What do you think this kind of went pear-shaped for Merab here? Do you think it's the fact that he wasn't able to establish that takedown threat and was kind of stuck on his feet? Momentum-wise, Petr Yan wouldn't step back and give him that momentum build that he gets, even though he held him up on his shoulder. What do you think went wrong for Merab here?
Well, I think what went wrong for him was that when he was being denied the takedowns, he didn't really have a great plan B. I don't think that striking with Petr Yan was going to be a great path to victory for him. And, I was, again, I had Eamon with me this week, and he had a great way of putting it into perspective. It's like, if you're a champion, you have a good plan, a great plan A and a good plan B. But if you can take away the plan A from a fighter with a good plan B, and you have a great plan A and you can execute your plan A over your opponent's plan B, more often than not, the fighter with the great plan A is going to win the fight. And I think that's kind of what happened, is that Yan frustrated Merab to a point where he had to fight emotionally and had to try to get it back. And every time he tried to get one back on Yan, Yan had an answer for him. And I think that we saw a frustrated Merab who just did not have an answer for what Yan was throwing at him. And every time he tried to get one back, he would get put deeper into the hole by Petr Yan. I think that was kind of the story of this fight.
I did a quick reaction thing earlier, and I said this was a great way to finish out the ESPN era for me. I felt full after this event, and this is, for me, the fight of the year. I know, like, I still got to go through everything, but the way that this fight made me feel, it just sometimes is a special championship fight where halfway through the fight, you're witnessing something that's going to stand the test of time. For me, this not only is this the fight of the year, for me, this has to be on a short list of some of my favorite championship fights in the UFC. Again, I just watched it. I got to think back to it, but I think it's because we've had a lot of those fights, right, recently, where it's either a complete domination, so it's impressive, or, there's the eye poke, but we just haven't had that conclusive battle championship kind of thing happen in a while. Is this for you? Does this rank up there for one of the best fights of the year?
It's funny. I think there were 4 great candidates tonight for fight of the night. And if you would have given Iwo Barnevsky against Ivo Aslan the fight of the night, I would have said I think that's a great pick. If you would have given McKinney versus Duncan a fight of the night, I think that would have been a great pick. And I think Cejudo versus Talbott was a great fight as well.
Great fights.
So we had a lot of great fights tonight. I think if you're looking at championship fights this year, that might have been the best championship fight of the year. I thought that I said in recent weeks that it felt like we didn't see that many competitive championship fights in 2025. There were a lot of lopsided fights. I think we might have talked about this after the last event when we saw Shevchenko just completely dummy Zhang Weili, and we saw Islam just completely destroy Jack Della Maddalena and put a look of resignation on his face that we'd never seen before. And you look up and down the ladder from championship fights. To start off the year, you had Islam against Moicano because of what happened with Arman. Not a competitive fight whatsoever. I thought that Jack Della Maddalena against Bilal was a somewhat competitive fight. I thought Manon versus Shevchenko was a competitive fight. Those happened to be on the same nights. But outside of that, we haven't seen a lot of really competitive championship fights that gave that full feeling that you're talking about. Like we got after the main event tonight, where it felt like we really got to see a classic bantamweight championship fight.
Hey, speaking on the flip side of the coin, Pantoja and Van, right? Just a bit of a shocker. Pantoja injuring his, now turns out it was his shoulder. Looked like his arm, but it's his shoulder. Van in this weird situation where no one really knows how to react to it. What was the scene like for you live? You're backstage as this is all going on. It must be, or maybe cage side. What is the feeling in the room when this happens? It's just brutal, right?
Well, I mean, mostly it's a reaction to that brutal injury. It's just a gruesome injury where they're showing it over and over again. You're like, ah. But yeah, I think this was the fight that stopped this from being a 10 out of 10 event because it feels like there's a lot left undone. We're left with a lingering feeling that we missed out on a great fight. The fight ends up being 26 seconds, right? Like it felt like the fight basically didn't happen, and now you've got the second youngest champion in UFC history. And when I spoke to Josh Van afterwards, if you go and watch my interview on my X account, he says it feels bittersweet, and he doesn't really know how to react because it's not really you can't really have a feeling of the gratifying feeling of having beaten the champ and taken his belt, because he didn't do that. Like I don't think that Joshua Van with a straight face can say, I proved that I'm the champion and that I'm the better man tonight, because it was a freak injury, right? And after the Merab fight, I said, like, okay, who's the fighter of the year in 2025? And a lot of people said Joshua Van, and I wouldn't be able to say that just because I don't feel like we got to see that he really is the true champion of the flyweight division. As much as I hate to say that, because a win's a win. He'll go down in history as being a flyweight champion, being the youngest, second youngest champion in UFC history, being the first champion from Myanmar, the first male champion from Southeast Asia. Like all of these great accolades, you can't take away from him. But I think the one thing that you can take away is the credit, because this wasn't a fight where we really truly got to see who the better man was.
Yeah, and when you're in Van's position as well, that's an awkward thing too, right? Because I'm sure he wouldn't really want it to go this way. But at the same time, like you said, all those accolades now come his way. He was able to defy the odds to be in this position. Now he's in this position where he's the champion. So if Pantoja is going to take some time, obviously he's going to have to defend the belt once before we potentially see him fight Pantoja, which is going to be interesting, right?
Yeah, it has to be Tatsuro Taira as well. And Dana, in the post-fight press conference, says he's going to try to make the fight in Japan if he can, because they haven't been to Japan for so long. And I think that would be awesome. But Tatsuro Taira tonight, what a performance. I mean, I was so impressed with what he did to Moreno. Finishing Moreno, that's a big deal. Like, Moreno hasn't officially been finished in his UFC career. Did get finished by Pantoja on Ultimate Fighter. But I just thought that Taira showed just how good his grappling was in that fight. He's just an absolute beast. And I know he had that loss to Royval, but if you look at what Taira has done since then, he's undeniable at this point, in my opinion. I think you're going to have two fighters born in the 2000s fighting each other for the championship, which is pretty cool.
Hey, by the way, with Taira, an incredible performance. He just looked he just looked sharp out there against Moreno. A lot of people saying maybe it was a little bit of an early stoppage, including Joe Rogan when he was interviewing him.
Right.
How did you see? Did you think it was a bit early?
I did at first, and I was watching. And I said to Eamon, like, watch his knees, watch how he keeps trying to move his knees, and then as soon as I said that, and we were watching the replay, the moment the referee stops the fight is like a second after both knees drop, and at that point, the referee probably said, "Well, he's no longer intelligently defending himself. He's not moving." And if you also look right after the stoppage, Moreno looks at the referee like he doesn't really know where he is, and then contested. It took him a second to contest it. I wouldn't say it was a great stoppage, but it's certainly a justifiable stoppage. And also, uh, I also don't think that even if you think that that was an early stoppage, it didn't look like it was getting better for Moreno anytime soon. In his attempts to move and to get up, once he goes flat, that's kind of a time where the referee says, "Well, I gave the guy the opportunity, and this is where we're at now. I understand the stoppage." And at the time, again, I thought maybe this is a two-time champion. If you're going to give somebody a chance to survive and show that he can fight his way out of this position, Moreno's certainly a good candidate for that. But it's not a stoppage where I would call it a bad stoppage. I still think it's a justifiable stoppage.
Yeah. So you mentioned him before, Henry Cejudo, right? What a retirement fight he had. Obviously lost, but had an absolute battle with Peyton Talbott. We weren't quite sure what to expect from this fight. It was a little bit like, why are they making this thing? But when this fight started and got going, man, it was an absolute battle. A lot of respect to Henry Cejudo, though, who didn't give up. It was his final fight, and maybe someone else in his position going through what he was going through with Peyton Talbott would have maybe reined it in. But man, he hung in there. He put on the fight. He put Peyton over. He was pure class and loss. Had that nice moment with Dana White and Hunter Campbell cage side. You really couldn't have kind of scripted the whole Henry Cejudo moment better outside of the fact that he wins. It was just another example of how much of an amazing human being, athlete, and fighter he is. Right, this final fight that we just witnessed.
For sure, you always worry because these guys have trained together in the past, and Cejudo was something of a mentor to Talbot early in his career. When those situations happen, usually you don't get the best fight. You get a fight that is very respectful and measured. This fight was not that. This fight was two guys that were looking to hurt each other, and that were looking to win the fight by any means necessary. And Peyton Talbot getting 3 takedowns against an Olympic gold medal wrestler, and that face that he made, it was like he won the Super Bowl when he took him down, and that first time and was smiling. You had to feel good for him. And I spoke to Peyton afterwards, and Peyton said that the calf kicks really affected him. They hurt him pretty badly, but I think that he has to be thrilled with that. And I also think that Henry, like you said, to his credit, never went away in that fight. Could have found a way out if he wanted to. Could have not come out for the third round. Instead, he just kept bringing the fight to Peyton Talbot. Didn't make it an easy win for him. Was always in his face. And I think that you look at the Peyton Talbot that was getting taken down by Raoni Barcelos and controlled to today's Peyton Talbot hanging with an Olympic gold medalist wrestler. His game has improved leaps and bounds. I'm excited to see the future for Peyton Talbot.
Dude, I got to say as well with Talbot, obviously, stock couldn't be higher now, right? I think a lot of people just forgot about that last performance the performance where he got taken down. And I think for them now, he is kind of like, as we go into Paramount, he is in a beautiful position to do big things in the division. But for Cejudo, man, 2 division champion, Olympic gold medalist, a win over Demetrius Johnson. He beat TJ Dillashaw. He beat Dominic Cruz, right? I feel like people are sleeping on the fact that this guy has had a very, very special career. And I don't know, I almost feel like he deserves more flowers than what he gets, because I guess the generation has moved on a little bit. It's a little bit of a new generation watching the sport. But man, he's had an incredible run, right? Iconic.
Yeah. And I always point at this kind of thing where, if Cejudo never came back, and you look at what his resume is, 2 division champion, defenses in both divisions. I think he's the only male champion that has done that defended the title in both divisions after winning it successfully. The Olympic gold medal. You're talking about a guy who a lot of people would say could be top 5. I said the same thing about Daniel Cormier. If Daniel Cormier walks away from the sport as soon as he beats Stipe Miocic the first time, people are talking about him like he could be the greatest of all time. He's in the top 5 conversation perennially. But this is a very fickle sport, and one where we look beyond, like Cejudo still accomplished those things. Like he didn't not do that. So Cormier still won the title in 2 divisions at once. He did not do that, but then he loses twice to Stipe after that. Cejudo comes back. I think he's what 0-4, 0-5 since coming back. Like these are still things that people hold against these athletes, but time tends to be kind in these situations. And I think that eventually people will look back and say what this guy did was very special. It might not be tonight, especially after this recent run since coming back to UFC. Although he was like, I think, a scorecard away from winning the championship back against Aljamain Sterling. We have to remember that too. But yeah, I think that you still have to remember these guys still achieve these things, and we need to give them their flowers. He's absolutely a UFC Hall of Famer at the very least.
What was the vibe like in the back there for you with it being the last ESPN card? Was it weird?
You know what's weird, Dennis, is that in 1 week there's an ESPN card. Like,
there's one more. We'll keep forgetting. That's right.
Why are we burying the body before
this is the last pay-per-view?
Yeah,
the last
before the funeral. We still have the last pay-per-view. Everybody's talking. Everybody's thanking. We have to thank ESPN. We still have an event next week on ESPN. Like, let's I know that it's an Apex card and it's a fight night, but like the ESPN era is not over yet. We still have another week to go. But I certainly think that what ESPN did for the UFC in terms of, you look at that lower third graphic that was always there. ESPN is on in every bar, every barber shop, every doctor's office, in every airport. What ESPN did for the UFC during that partnership, I think cannot be overstated. It was so massive for the growth of this sport. And the UFC, of course, pulled their own weight. Them going through the pandemic and putting on events when other sports weren't. The UFC certainly helped ESPN as well. We have to look at it as a two-way street. But I certainly think that the ESPN era was very kind to the UFC.
So many crazy moments in the era. And also shout out to our friend Brett Okamoto, right? Because he did such a good job. And I'm excited to see what they do if they cover much of the sport next, but they have all the right people in place to cover this Paramount era. So I'm excited to see what happens next.
And
some other stuff.
Also, Carlos Contreras Lagasti of ESPN Deportes does a fantastic job as well. So
good, fantastic too. And also people behind the scenes like Charlie and all the other people we got to know that are just such great people, and can't wait to see what's next for him. Hey, by the way, a couple of things happened tonight outside of the fighting. First off, I'm just trying to think, what should I cover first? Well, let's talk about the fight announcements. Some absolute bangers announced for UFC 324, but specifically for the Volkanovski Lopez 2 rematch. It's going to be in Sydney on Feb 1st, which is January 31st in the States and Canada. Well, obviously, we know that Alex Volkanovski is going to be taking on Diego Lopez in a rematch that doesn't really make any sense, but whatever. It's going to be good to see Alex Volkanovski in Sydney. That's going to be special, especially if that is going to be his retirement fight. But on the undercard, we've got Dan Hooker versus BSD. Rafael Fiziev versus Ruffy. We got Tai Tuivasa coming back against Talison Teixeira, and Jimmy Crute there on the main card too. What was your reaction when you saw the rest of the card? And obviously Strickland and Fluffy moved over to the following week because Strickland not that keen on flying back to Australia.
First of all, I love that Strickland and Fluffy fight. I think that fight is going to be awesome. But let's focus on Sydney. I mean, I think that BSD versus Dan Hooker. I mean, if that fight's bad, something's gone terribly wrong. That fight has like all the makings of a phenomenal fight. And then you could probably say the same thing about Fiziev and Ruffy, two incredible strikers. I think that that Sydney card, at the very least, is going to be incredibly entertaining. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out. Even Tai Tuivasa against Talison Teixeira, that's a fun fight too.
That's a fun way for him to get back into it. I'm curious to see a lot of questions there. Hey, by the way, people are going to be like Fiziev versus Ruffy. Like, Ruffy just lost his fight. Why is he getting Fiziev? But we are entering.
He lost to Gaethje.
That's true, but people felt like it was kind of close. But it's also a different era, I feel, right? Like, we'll talk about this in a second, but the UFC are kind of making moves to, I almost feel like it's a relaunch, and they're setting a lot of the exciting kind of fighters in spots to potentially have big runs in Paramount. Is that the kind of feeling you get?
Well, I think that the Volkanovski Lopez fight kind of points to that, because like I mentioned to you last time we spoke, I think that the reason you make that fight is because of the Latin American deal with Paramount Plus and trying to. And I even asked Diego this when I spoke to him this week. I said, "Do you think that that's one of the reasons?" He said he agreed, but I think that Diego also raises a good point. Like his fight with Gian Silva was so dynamic, so exciting that I. The hard part about it is that Volkanovski's facing him on back-to-back fights, which doesn't make a ton of sense because Volkanovski looked really good against him. But at the same time, I think that if Diego Lopez makes some adjustments, this fight could be a lot closer.
It's interesting because Volkanovski wanted to fight on this card against Murphy, and they were ready to go, and then the UFC said no.
Yeah,
You're fighting Lopez in February, but you got to take your hats off to Volkanovski, right? Because I was talking to his coach after the fight got announced, and he's like, "Yeah, this is probably going to be the last young contender that Alex is going to fight, right? Because he's at this point in his career." And I go, you know what? That's an interesting way to look at it. Like Volk just taking any fight, toughest contenders, like could have probably taken other matchups. Just you can't respect the guy enough. He's just always willing to fight the best guys. We've seen champions just be like, "No, and I'm not going to fight this guy." And he's just the opposite of that. Speaking of people who aren't getting title shots, I want to share a little bit of footage of Dana White absolutely not going off, but giving us his real thoughts about where Arman Tsarukyan is in this whole lightweight picture.
I wouldn't say that he's the odd man out. He had an opportunity, and you guys know how that played out, and he's gonna have to work his way back. I don't give a shit what the number says. He's gonna have to work his way back. There's just too much goes into this for those type of things to happen. We had a little. We were talking back in my room tonight, and we were talking about all the crazy shit that's happened over the last 20-something years. But you can't do that. You can't get the opportunity, and then it can't end that way. So he's got to work his way back.
So Dana White doesn't really care what Arman's ranking is. He's still got to work his way back, Aaron. So that means that he's not even going to get eventually, we thought the next fight for him would be a title shot once this thing clears up. Sounds like he's going to have to fight again before he even gets a title fight. This is insane stuff, right? What's the point of the rankings if this is the case?
He also came in and made weight for a championship fight as a backup. And he said he was willing to do it again the next month for that BMF fight, just to be there, just in case they needed somebody. And then he went and beat Dan Hooker in the main event of a big card. What more is this guy gonna have to do? And who's he gonna face? Who else is even out there at lightweight that is he gonna face Benoit Saint-Denis if he ends up I don't know. It seems like he is the odd man out. I mean, he says, "Oh, he's not the odd man out." No, he's the odd man out. There's nobody for him to face right now. He's on the outside looking in. He's on the bench. So I kind of understand. Listen, I understand. If you look at that fight between Makhachev and Moicano, it was so uncompetitive that it basically ruined the card. So you put all that promotional value into a card. You do a UFC countdown. You have posters. It is very damaging to the promotion to have to turn around an event like that with short notice with a guy who was whatever Moicano was ninth or whatever it is. It does hurt the promotion. I get what they're saying. But at the same time, I just don't know how much more this guy needs to do to be in consideration for a title fight. So I'm interested to see how this year plays out. I don't think it's going to play. I don't think it's going to go well for Arman. I just don't know what else he's going to do. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's pissed off about this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, what's going to happen is, we've got Gaethje and Paddy. We know that's going to happen. So someone's going to win that. And then likely Ilya Topuria. Yeah, they're going to fight. And then maybe Ilya then decides to, again, take us some time and go up to welter. I don't even know. So he might not be fighting until not next year, but the end of next year or 2027. And man, it's why let's not have the rankings then? What is the point of these rankings? Because it's obvious that they don't really matter that much. But also, just on a side note, people feel like Arman Tsarukyan might be the best guy in the division. So do you think that's also one of the reasons why this is such a difficult situation? People are questioning who wins between him and Ilya Topuria all the time now. That's what I think makes it such a difficult situation, not having the best
I think that people want to see the best fights. That's all. So if you have a guy that's ranked number one and he's healthy and ready to go, and he's not going to fight anybody, people are going to be like, "What's going on here?"
God, all right, man. Well, there's a lot happening here. And by the way, Dana White also had some stuff to say about Tom Aspinall. Seems like he's building towards reconciling with Tom and wants to sort of move forward there as well. That's the vibe I got from when he answered Oscar's question.
Yeah, certainly. I think that, and to an extent, he is right. I think that Tom does feel a little bit disrespected by how Dana reacted. Dana saying, "Oh, his eye is fine," or he's not. I think what Dana was kind of trying to say was like his eye, like it's not that his eye is fine, that he's ready to fight tomorrow, that he's cleared or anything like that. But he says like it's an eye injury and he's going to be okay. I don't think that he was trying to really be super negative about Tom, but I think that when you have enough people coming after you for this, and it looks like perhaps they were, influenced by Dana saying that there's nothing wrong with it, or that he's like, that it's not a bad injury. All of the people that take those words and then weaponize them against Tom, I think that's what the point of conflict is here. Whereas I don't think what Dana said, Dana did say today, like I don't think I said anything negative about him, like him personally, or that I like, said that he was like he wasn't saying anything like Tom Aspinall's like should have continued fighting or anything along those lines. So I think that they kind of both have a point in this instance.
He didn't say though, like, Tom is the champion, he's the best, like he didn't do that. But then he
That's
did
true.
sort of, I feel bad a little bit for Tom because he didn't get that side of it. But at the end of the day as well, from what I understand with Dana White, he doesn't even know where he is when he does these post-fight press conferences sometimes. Remember when he thought Mosar's fight with someone else's fight? And like the guy's just all over the shop, has no idea sometimes who half of the fighters are on the card. Because he's like in the back doing meetings and there's all sorts of stuff that people don't know happens at these cards. So regardless, it'll be good to that'd be a shocker, Pereira, and I mean not a shocker, it'd be a massive fight with Pereira and Garn if Tom's eyes don't heal up. Man, I feel so bad for Tom.
Yeah, people are talking
That would
about
be
this like
insane if they
interim.
do that.
I don't think that if you look at how the schedule is shaking out right now, like Q1 is done. So if Tom Aspinall is cleared in like 3 weeks, let's say, at like the beginning of January, there's nothing that would stop him from fighting in like April or May if he's going to be able to like go back into training full on and his vision comes back. Like I think that a lot of people are overreacting right now, and until Tom says like, "Hey, I'm not cleared." Like if it's like February and he's like, "Hey, I'm still not cleared," then you can start talking about interim title. But like, we don't need to rush into anything here. The first quarter's been announced. Like we're good.
Yeah. And by the way, wishing Tom a quick recovery, because there can't be anything worse than having issues with your eyes and all the stuff. Like the guy has a family, and it's like,
Yeah, leave Tom Aspinall alone. Let the guy heal up.
leave him alone. He's a good dude.
Leave Tom Aspinall alone.
Yeah. All right, man. I'm going to wrap up. Final card next year, of course. I mean, next week, of course, but it's been an incredible year for you. Last pay-per-view of the year. And I know you geared up for a big, I feel like we're geared up for a big first quarter next year, huh? How exciting is this next quarter going to be? It's going to be massive. I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what if anything changes in terms of the look of the events. Or I like that the events are going to be an hour earlier. That's great for us people on the East Coast of North America. So I'm happy about that. That's for sure. I think it's going to be interesting to see if people can, are willing to kind of adjust their routines to accommodate that. That being said, I mean, every weekend seems like the events start at different times. So if you're going to be earmarking your Saturday for UFC events, you're going to be watching it regardless of what time it is. So that's cool. And I think that they're making the most of what they have for available to them for Q1. Like I don't think we're seeing any. I think really the fight that people have wanted to see that we are getting is Oliveira and Holloway for the VMF championship. Like I think that's a fight that everybody's wanted to see and everybody's excited about, and not a fight that they're like, oh, why would they make that fight? That's a fight that makes a lot of sense. And then I'm curious to see how the rest of the schedule goes, because typically they do an event in Miami in April. I don't know if that's like confirmed for next year, but that card is always stacked. And then they're going to be stacking that card in June for the White House. Like there's only so many big fights you can make, and I just want to see how they're able to fit the pieces of the puzzle together. That's what's interesting to me.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Some weird fights being made, but at the end of the day, exciting fights and fun fights. And by the way, it's interesting because UFC 324, we saw the prelims of that one, and that has like Umar on the prelims.
Rose,
and all,
Natalia
and all
Silva.
that. And then you're like, okay, no more pay-per-view in America, right? These cards are going to be structured differently. They don't have to put as much behind the paywall, even though in Canada and Australia, it's still pay-per-view. So I'm just excited. And I saw today there was, they used that camera angle from the ref, and there were all sorts of funky new camera angles that I didn't really notice as much. So it's definitely going to be, it feels a little bit fresh and exciting right now, which is a great way to start off next year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think that people underestimate how much having 6 weeks for that fights is going to make people hungry for that first card out of the gate. And the 2 numbered events in a row, I think, is actually kind of a stroke of genius from the UFC. It doesn't, maybe right now you wouldn't think that, but when you have those 5-6 weeks of no fights, and you're going to have 2 numbered events in a row, like the fan appetite is going to be like outrageous when those weekends roll around.
Dude, we're going to be horny for some MMA, some UFC. There he is there. Aaron Bronsteter, speaking of horny, you are the man. My man. I don't know what I'm going with.
Listen,
you always make us stand
right
whenever
now.
you come on Submission Radio, dude. There you go. Huh? What a sentence. And I appreciate you joining me from your hotel room. A little bit like True Lies, do it slower, sexier. Aaron Bronsteter, I appreciate you. The Jamie Lee Curtis of MMA. Thank you so much.
Congratulations on the baby, by the way. I think that I'm excited for you and your family.
Thanks, brother. If I survive, I can't wait to do more episodes with you. Have a safe trip home, and thanks for joining me here on Submission Radio.
Of course, it's my pleasure. And I'll say this, if you're thinking of having a third, going from 2 to 3 is easier than going from 1 to 2. So just keep that in the back of your mind when the going gets tough.
Yeah, keep it in the back of my mind as I'm on my way to the office to get a snip. But thank you so much for the advice, Aaron. I appreciate you as always.